All right, what is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Libraries and Weight Rooms podcast. We are officially on episode number 172, and I hope we're all in post-Thanksgiving recovery mode. I know that I had an absolutely fantastic Thanksgiving. I spent it with one of my good friends and his family, and it was just absolutely fantastic. It really made me feel like I was actually kind of with my own family. And so I hope everybody had a fantastic holiday and getting ready for Christmas in the upcoming weeks and the new year. And one of the things that I want to talk about today is something that I did last week, and I wrote an email on this to our Daily Diamond community. And on a side note, if you do want to join the Daily Diamond community, you can go to yourdailydiamonds.com. These are little 30-second stories and ideas that I send out on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday to our Acres of Diamonds community. People seem to really enjoy them. And I wrote this email, and I read the email, and I was like, this would make a nice little podcast. Just this idea behind keeping personal commitments. And why are these important? And what happened was last week, and I don't know if this is a thing in Florida. This is kind of my first, you could say, full year in Florida. But honestly, I don't remember it being this chilly in December of last year. And I say that with a very, a very heavy heart, because in Rochester, New York, where I'm from, chilly is like 0 degrees. Chilly's like negative sometimes. Like 40 degrees in Rochester is not that bad. Yet 40 degrees here in Florida, to me, seems like freezing. And I don't know if it's probably because my standard or my baseline of what is cold might have shifted. But over the last couple of days, kind of like starting like last week, I wake up early, I go to the gym, and when I walk outside, I can actually see my breath. And I'm like, wow, like I never thought I would ever see that in Florida. And I don't know if it's just because I'm waking up early or whatever, but it's been like pretty chilly in the morning. And so my typical morning routine is I go to my CrossFit gym, or I go to boxing depending upon the day, but I'm working out by 5:30 in the morning. And then my workout is typically done around 6:30ish. And then after my CrossFit days, I like to go in the sauna for anywhere from 10 to 15 minutes, get a good sweat on. And then I like to end with a nice ice bath. Great way to shock the system. I like to do it because I genuinely don't want to do it, right? And taking an ice bath in like 45-degree weather where you can see your breath is really not what I wanted to do. And last week, I think it was like Wednesday or Friday. I'm pretty sure it was Wednesday because Friday the gym was closed. Wednesday, I did the workout and went into the sauna for maybe like 12 minutes. And I remember getting out of the sauna and I was already like a little chilly, right? When like your sweat starts to like freeze. And I got out and I was like, there's no way I'm taking an ice bath today in 45-degree weather when the ice bath itself is like 39, 40 degrees. I'm like, there's no way I'm doing that. And I like sat down on the bench and I was kind of like taking like my socks off and everything. And I was just kind of sitting there and I'm like, I told myself I was going to do it though. And I had like this internal war inside of my head. And that internal war was, if I don't do it, it really isn't going to matter, right? Like nobody really gives a shit if I take an ice bath or not. My parents aren't going to care. My friends aren't going to care. You aren't going to care. Nobody's going to care. So like the value of taking the ice bath is very low if you look at it from that perspective. Then the other part of my mind was saying, how can I talk about discipline and talk about consistency and talk about saying I'm going to do something and then actually following through with it if I don't do it for myself? Because at that point, I think those people are frauds. And I sat there and I just was like stuck in this thought. And I really didn't want to go do this. And I said, you know what? I have to do this. I literally have to do this. And I had this thought that then kind of pushed this conflicting thought out of the way. And I thought, what if I did this without thinking about it? Like, without thinking about how cold it was going to be, without thinking about the cold air as it hits my body as I walked just out of the CrossFit gym, and my sweat starts to freeze and I start to see the sunrise kind of coming up over the apartment buildings. but I see my breath in the air still, and like the goosebumps start to hit you, and then you have to get in a colder environment. I'm like, what if I didn't think about that stuff? What if I just did it and tried not to have any thoughts in my head? Which I don't know how easy that is to do, but I had that thought that kind of came into my noggin. So I made the decision, and I didn't feel like, yes, good job, Deej, right? You made the decision to do the hard thing. I literally was just like, I'm just going to go do this. And that was the final thought. That was the final piece of the actual idea in my head. So I ended up grabbing my towel. I walked to the back of the gym, and like this walk is like a 50, maybe like 100-foot walk. And I remember the whole time, like my brain was like numb. Like I wasn't thinking about anything. And I literally just opened the door. I turned my watch on to like 2 minutes and 20 seconds, and I got in the water. And I remember breathing like a rhino, like very powerful, very loud, very fast, just like got it all out of me. And I just sat there. And while I was sitting in this ice bath, I could see my breath, and there was like some dew on like the wood, like around like kind of where it all is. And I was sitting there and I'm like, good job. That's the only thing that kind of came into my head. Good job. You can now have a little bit of credibility that you do what you said you were going to do. You can have a little bit of credibility that you're doing things that you don't want to do. It doesn't necessarily mean that you want to do it. It means that I don't want to do it, right? Waking up at 5 a.m. and going to the gym is not super, super hard for me personally because I've been doing it for 10 years. Yet for you, it might be difficult, right? So our level of challenge is based upon our own perspectives and experiences. This is kind of hard for me, especially doing it in 45-degree weather. I got in and I took my big rhino breath, and I just, in my head, the only thing in my head was good job. And it was the credibility that I was doing what I said I was going to do. I was doing hard things, and I kept my personal commitment. And like I said, I could have easily not done this and nobody would have given a shit. But I would have known. And just that is enough to make me feel like a little bit of a loser, like a little bit of an imposter. And so today's episode is merely about keeping your personal commitments. And I would urge you to even ask yourself, do you have any personal commitments? Do you have any things that you tell yourself that you're going to do, and frankly, you don't tell anybody else about it? And I would even urge you to not give a shit who else knows what you're doing. Make it personal to you. Because I was listening to a podcast this last week with two of my role models. I have two very, very specific role models in the world right now, Chris Williamson and Stephen Bartlett. Chris Williamson is the host of Modern Wisdom, the podcast called Modern Wisdom, and Stephen Bartlett is the host of the podcast called Diary of a CEO. Both of these gentlemen are what I would like to behave like in the coming years of my early 30s. I generally think we need more men like that. And Chris Williamson was being interviewed by Stephen Bartlett on Diary of a CEO. And I believe what they were talking about was how can young men, and actually how can anybody, improve their self-esteem and improve their confidence? And Chris Williamson said, keep your personal commitments. And this is why I am so adamant about having calendars to track things, having agendas to write down what you're going to forget about, having whiteboards to write in things that pop into your head or things that you want to do going into 2025. Writing down what you are personally going to commit to has nothing to do with anybody else. It's strictly how you are choosing to live your life and how you are choosing to behave when nobody is there to watch you. Nobody's going to be there to make sure that you eat the apple instead of the pizza. Nobody's going to be there to make sure that you get out of bed at 5 a.m. Nobody's going to be there to watch you read that book at Friday night or wake up early and go to take that run or go to that yoga class or put those extra hours in making those calls or making those emails or building all of the marketing automation. Nobody's going to be there for that. You have to do this for yourself. You have to personally commit to it. And that's why when I talk a lot about like self-image, think about what you might think about yourself when you stay committed to those things. When all the dust settles and you lay your head down on your pillow at night and you go, I took that ice bath in the 45-degree weather. Wonder what else I can do. What do you think starts to change about the way you view yourself? All right, so this podcast is really about, one, defining what those personal commitments might be, and two, following through with them for one person, and that person is you. I want you to think about that, because to Chris Williamson's point, it's going to improve your self-esteem, it's going to improve your confidence, and all that stuff improves your self-image. And I don't think we need more people lying to themselves. I've lied to myself before, and you know what? I probably will lie to myself again in the future. And I'm going to be pissed off about it. I'll tell you right now. And I'm going to try to do a better job of it. And I'm going to try to make even more mid-course corrections, because keeping my personal commitments has been one of the most drastic shifts in my life when it comes to tracking my personal commitments. That's why I have a whole calendar to do it, right? Because it's changed so much what I think about myself. So take an inventory of what your personal commitments are, and then ask yourself, are you really following through on them? All right? So thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode of the Libraries and Weight Rooms podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, send it to somebody who needs to be more committed to themselves. Take themselves a little bit more serious. Share it on your story. Give us a like, give us a rating, give us a review. And until next time, keep doing hard things both mentally and physically. And we'll talk to you guys soon. We'll see you.